Shio Gang, and welcome to part 3, Read Aloud and Lesson for the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. If we go to our Google Classroom, this assignment is called Paranoia, Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. We're going to read pages 146 and 147. We're going to answer the questions in Google Slides, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we can fill out the info about Les Goodman. So, I already have my story open, so let me get my slides open. Okay. So, we're getting into the rising action, which, remember, takes up a majority of a story. And, once you have that triggering incident that kind of starts the action rolling, it's going to keep going there for a while because the climax isn't until like the end, like toward the end of the story. So this is about paranoia. Paranoia, everybody's coming to get me. If you didn't know what paranoia is, it's the feeling, that feeling. So how Rod Serling builds suspense through characters' tension, and the monsters are due in Maple Street. Okay, so even if this isn't a very action-heavy story, it is a very tension and suspense-filled story, going through the different thoughts and the feelings of characters. So step 1 that he uses to build tension and suspense in our story is the introduction of the unknown element. We as people, we very much base our sense of safety and security on knowing what's going on, and if things go wrong, knowing what we can do to fix it or what we shouldn't do to make it worse. So our characters are put into a situation that is unknown to them. They don't know what it is and they don't know how to fix it. So we have a group of people who are put in this situation. So did you ever lay awake at night paranoid and unable to fall asleep? I mean, I have plenty. And so one thing you might notice is that, those late night fears that keep us awake, it's not usually like, oh, I wonder if there's a robber around or something. It's more of like, was there a ghost? Was there a monster? What's this noise? What's this? And they're not thoughts that we would normally have during the day, but if you are put into that position where like you're tired, it's dark, and you just have that little spark of paranoia, that's where the mind goes. It's not usually to real life things. It's more of the supernatural and the unknown things. Because while in life we might worry about robbers and like real life things, it's that fear of the unknown that fuels our paranoia, which is why, many cultures have developed folk tales and legends about monsters that are, in the darkness or in the woods. It's just a way of like dealing with that fear of the unknown. So the people on Maple Street see and hear an unidentified object fall at the very beginning of our story. So it falls from space. Number 1 is, what problems does this event cause on page 142 that people are unable to explain? So take our story, scroll to 142 if you don't remember from the other day, and right after this narrator speaks about how this is the moment before the monsters come, people start explaining the things that won't work. So you see electricity is off, you see the phone won't work, someone's stove isn't working, go over here, radio's not working, a mower's not working, so any of those are fine. And so you will just double click on that line and start typing in your answer. So step 2 our author uses is the sensation of being trapped. So that feeling of being trapped or helpless. So all of the little problems, at first are confusing and they're annoying and they're stressful, but they can still maybe explain those things away. Well, these are a lot of electric-based things, must have been a meteor, it's messing with the electrical storm, something like that. It can be explained, and we just need to find out the answer. Until their ability to leave Maple Street is affected. Now, it's not taken away completely, but it is affected. So what event happens at the bottom of page 143 that probably caused the characters to change from feelings of confusion and annoyance to feelings of being trapped and paranoid? So if we go to the bottom of page 143, here it is, bottom of page 143. And that is when Steve gets into his car. And go ahead and pause and read what happens there if you need to, if you don't remember. And tell me what event happens that now makes it harder for them to get out of this situation. Okay? Because that's what that second step for this crowd of people to build some tension and some stress and maybe some paranoia. Okay? Then this one, as long as you think about it and put in a real answer, there's no wrong answer. How would you feel by the end of page 143? When beautiful town, weird thing crashes, you think it's a meteor, the electric won't work, and now your ability to leave town is hindered. Is this like normal, a little bit stressful, or like really stressful? Do you start joining that crowd and the weird feelings? Let me know. Building tension part 3 is planting the seed of fear. It's very important. So when we start to, none of the answers we have quite make sense. So we start coming up with our own answers because we don't like unanswered questions. So our brain will keep going until we can come up with answers that fit the problem. Because it's one thing when all the electric goes out, but if radios, battery-powered things, gas-powered things are also not working, this isn't making sense. So, when an unknown problem comes and has no logical answers, we start to invent our own answers. The answer we invent might be a way to make the problem seem normal or unimportant. Like, in those scary movies when you're like, oh, it's just the wind. Oh, it's just the house settling. Let's not think about it. But you're watching the movie and know that there is a monster who's going to attack them all. But, so that's one option. You just kind of blow off the problem. And then the other times, our explanations can start to be based in our own fears. And that's what happens with, our legends, or like, when you're just laying in bed at night and you start to be paranoid and maybe your mind starts going to aliens or ghosts or werewolves or who knows. And so your mind starts to look for a reason why you feel the way you do. So, sorry. What is one explanation the characters gave on page 145 to make their problem seem normal? And what explanation does Tommy give on page 145 for the problem that might have been the thing that planted the seed of fear? So go to page 145, find one reasonable answer or brushing it off, and one answer from Tommy that starts to trigger the fear. And 6 is a prediction. So, prediction is it's an inference about the future, a logical guess based on evidence about the future. And tell me what effect do you think Tommy's explanation will give on the future of the plot for these characters? So pause and fill those out, because here we get to when we finally have a suspect. The mob begins. Now, all we need after 1, 2, and 3, we have the unknown, feeling kind of trapped and helpless. Someone plants the seed of fear. And now all we need is for somebody to accidentally look suspicious. And even a group of kind, friendly people can start to give in to their fears. Vocabulary, justify. When we try to come up with reasons why it is okay to do something we wouldn't normally do. It's called justifying. Another term might be making excuses. So I don't know if you ever had a mom or grandma or dad tell you, or like a neighbor, uncle, tell you like, don't make excuses, or, there's reasons, but then there's excuses. And so justifications and excuses are like when we know we did something we're not supposed to, but now we're trying to come up with reasons why it's okay that we did this thing. Like, I don't normally steal, but Bianca has this really fancy pen that I love, and here's my well, she's not really using it. Well, she doesn't really appreciate it. Well, her family has lots of money, so she can buy a new one. Stealing doesn't become okay. It doesn't become an okay thing. My moral compass isn't like, ooh, stealing is a great idea, but my brain wants to justify the decision I made to steal her pen. So now it's going to come up with reasons or excuses why it was okay. Did stealing become okay? Not really, but our brain doesn't like when our actions don't match our beliefs, so it'll come up with reasons. So once the characters decide to suspect Les Goodman, they start to convince themselves that Les was always suspicious. And so this is called justification after the fact. So justification after the decision is made. Because they're trying to come up with reasons why it's okay to suspect Les after they've already made up their minds. So like with the pen, I made up my mind to steal Bianca's fancy pen. My brain is not thrilled with the fact that I just acted outside of my own moral and ethical compass of what's right and wrong. So now I'm going to come up with reasons why it's okay. Even though, part of me knows it's not really okay. And so is this going to be the same with this character Les? They will, and this will happen multiple times in our story too, but so they will suspect him because of something he does, but then they're going to justify or make up reasons why they really should have always suspected him. And so those are two different things. And so we'll go through that in a minute. And then I want you to also be aware with our focus for reading. Here's Les Goodman, or somebody's idea of him. And for these different characters who are going to become suspects, we're going to read and pick up their character traits. So their personality traits. We're going to find the cause for the mob to focus on this character, how the character changes, and maybe even find and throw in an important quote. So that sets up our reading for today. We've answered all of those questions. And so next we are going to read the next 2 pages, answer questions 7, 8, and 9, and get a decent chunk of Les Goodman's information filled out. And we are going to do that by using the text box feature and putting it over top, because it's not an editable picture. Editable. It's not edible either. All right. So that's it for this part. Hope to see you in part 2, so we can continue to get good grades together and break down a pretty good story together. Shigei.